3 weeks passed since Ben had returned from Varelia Prime. He spoke more now, but his eyes still held a shadow that had not been there before. Daniel kept his visits frequent, bringing small gifts from different human colonies to lift the boy's mood. But Daniel knew recovery would not erase what happened. The council believed the matter was closed. Their official statements to Earth were filled with polished words about friendship and unity. Behind those words was silence about the real events. Daniel had sent several requests for detailed records from the facility where Ben had stayed, but each reply from the council's clerks was the same: no further information is available. On Earth, most people knew little about the incident. The government had decided not to release the details until they had more proof. They feared the truth would harm relations with the alien powers, but not everyone in the medical team agreed. With this silence, Sarah was one of those people. She had been the lead medic when Ben was brought back to the Aurora Dawn. She had examined him, read the data from his suit, and studied the unusual patterns in his oxygen readings. She knew the boy had been placed in an environment designed to push his limits far beyond what was safe for a human child. Sarah had kept her findings quiet at first, following orders. But every time she saw Ben walking slowly through the ship's corridors, every time she noticed how he avoided crowded rooms and sudden noises, the guilt grew heavier. She began to believe that silence was not protecting peace. It was protecting those who had caused harm. One night, when the ship was docked at an orbital station above Earth, Sarah made her choice. She copied the full medical report onto a secure data stick, along with the images from the scans. She sent it through an encrypted channel to an independent news network, known for revealing hidden truths. 2 days later, the story broke across every colony. News screens flashed with the headline, "Human child subjected to alien experimentation in council facility." The images were clear, scans showing Ben's stressed heart rate, the air composition in his suit, and the long hours he had been kept in a sealed chamber. Though the report avoided graphic detail, it was enough to stir a storm. On Mars, miners paused their drills to gather around small projectors. On Luna, workers in the domed city of Selene crowded in cafes to watch the news feed. On Earth itself, in every city and settlement, people stared in disbelief and anger. Interviews with experts explained that the environment Ben was placed in could cause panic, weakness, and mental strain even for trained adults. For a child, it was far worse. The council's description of cultural observation now sounded like a thin cover for something much colder. Protests began almost immediately in New London. Thousands filled the streets, carrying banners with the words "Protect Our Own" and "Justice for Ben." In the ocean city of Pacifica, people tied ribbons to the pillars of the council hall. Digital petitions spread faster than any virus, gathering millions of signatures demanding action. In the Galactic Council chamber, the tension was unmistakable. Representatives from other species avoided speaking to Daniel in public, fearing the growing storm. But when Daniel walked through the great hall, he could feel dozens of eyes on him, some watching with caution, others with open challenge. Daniel addressed Earth's leaders through a secure channel from his office aboard the Aurora Dawn. "The people know now," he said. "If we stay silent any longer, they will think we agree with what happened. The council will not hand over the truth unless we force their hand." President Malik, a calm but firm man, listened closely. "If we push too hard, we could be isolated. But if we do nothing, we lose the trust of our own people. What do you suggest?" Daniel's voice did not waver. "We demand the names of everyone involved. We demand open investigation. And if they refuse, we make it clear we will protect our people by any means necessary." Before Malik could answer, another voice joined the call: Admiral Price, commander of the Earth Defense Fleet. "Ambassador, the people are with you. My ships are ready if it comes to that." Sarah's name soon became known across human space. She was praised by many for her courage, though the council called her actions an unauthorized leak and demanded her removal from the diplomatic mission. Earth refused, stating that whistleblowers who protect human life would not be punished. Meanwhile, messages began to arrive from unexpected places. Some alien citizens sent words of support, saying they too disapproved of the council's secrecy. Others warned Daniel that the council's ruling members saw the leak as an insult. That could not go unanswered. One evening, Daniel walked into the infirmary to find Ben watching the news. On a small screen, the boy looked up, his voice soft. "They know now." "Yes," Daniel said. "The whole galaxy knows." Ben was quiet for a moment. Then he asked, "Will they stop doing this to others?" Daniel crouched beside him. "That is what we are going to make sure of." The next day, Daniel stood before the council assembly. His words carried the weight of an entire species. "A child of Earth was taken into your care," he returned changed. "You call it observation. We call it wrong. The human people demand the truth and the names of those who approve this act. And we will not wait forever." The chamber filled with murmurs. But council leader Vorthal rose from his seat. His silver skin reflected the chamber lights, and his voice was steady. "Ambassador, you speak as if we are criminals. You forget that your species is new here. You have much to learn before making such accusations." Daniel met his gaze. "We have learned enough to know that we will not stand aside when one of our own is harmed." Vorthal's eyes narrowed slightly. "Be careful, Ambassador. The council has many friends." Daniel's reply was calm, but his words were sharp. "So does Earth." When the session ended, the council still refused to release the names, but the message had been sent. Humanity's patience was not endless, and their anger was growing. The protests back home grew larger, and calls for stronger action echoed in every human world. The galaxy had watched Earth enter the council as a young and hopeful member. Now they were beginning to see another side, a species that could unite fiercely when one of their own was wronged, and somewhere deep in his thoughts, Daniel knew this was only the beginning. The year was 2438, and Earth had only recently taken its place among the stars. For the first time in history, humanity had earned a seat in the Galactic Council, a great assembly of hundreds of alien civilizations. This was not just a table for leaders, but a place where decisions about trade, defense, and culture were made for the entire galaxy. For many on Earth, it felt like a dream. Daniel, Earth's ambassador to the council, stood aboard the sleek transport ship Rorodon. As it approached the shining spires of Verelia Prime, the council's main capital, the alien city glittered beneath a golden sky, its towers twisting upward like crystal spears. Hundreds of vessels moved in ordered lines through the air, each belonging to a different species. This trip was supposed to be a symbol of unity. The council had invited Earth to send a young representative to join an intercultural exchange program. They wanted to show that the galaxy's many species could share knowledge and friendship. From an early age, the choice had been unusual. They selected Ben, a 12-year-old research prodigy who had impressed scientists with his advanced understanding of physics. Ben had been nervous but excited. He had trained for weeks, learning about alien customs, greetings, and laws. His short black hair was neatly trimmed, and his eyes shone with curiosity. His parents had hugged him tightly before he left, telling him to take notes and bring back stories about the strange worlds he would see. At first, everything went smoothly. The alien hosts welcomed him with grand speeches and formal dinners. Ben sent short video messages home about the towering crystal gardens, floating cities, and creatures that shimmered like living rainbows. His words carried excitement, but there was also something else, a hesitation that Daniel noticed in each recording. Then, on the third day, the update stopped. The council claimed Ben had been taken to a secure research facility for cultural observation. Daniel found the wording odd, but the council assured him that everything was fine. Still, hours turned into a full day, and then another. The ambassadors sent urgent requests for updates, but they were met with silence. On the seventh day, without warning, Ben was returned. He arrived aboard a small shuttle, escorted by 2 council security officers. Daniel was waiting at the docking bay. The moment the shuttle door opened, Daniel saw that something was wrong. Ben was pale, his shoulders hunched, and his once bright eyes looked dull. His steps were slow, as if each movement was heavy. "Ben," Daniel called gently. Stepping forward, The boy lifted his head but did not speak. The officers handed over a sealed data case and bowed stiffly. "The cultural observation is complete," one of them said. "He is unharmed." Daniel frowned. The boy's silence was louder than any words. Back aboard the Aurora Dawn, a medical team examined Ben in the private infirmary. Daniel stayed in the corner, watching the readings on the monitors. The doctors spoke in careful tones, but Daniel could read their faces. There was no sign of physical injury. That would explain his condition, yet the boy flinched at every sudden sound. When Daniel asked what had happened, Ben would only shake his head and say, "I don't want to talk about it." His voice was flat, almost lifeless. The council's official report arrived hours later. It described the incident as a misunderstanding in cultural methodology. According to the document, Ben had been placed in a sensory adaptation environment to test human tolerance for alien environments. They claimed the process was safe and that any discomfort was unintentional. Daniel did not believe them. He forwarded the report to Earth, but the leaders were divided. Some wanted to push for answers immediately. Others feared angering the Council so soon after joining. Humanity's position in the galaxy was still fragile. They had only a small number of warships compared to older species, and trade agreements were still being negotiated. But Daniel could not let it go. He had seen the boy's eyes. He had seen the way his hands trembled when he reached for a glass of water. Something had happened on that alien moon, something the Council did not want anyone to know. Over the next few days, Daniel visited Ben often. He brought books, puzzles, and small treats from Earth. At first, the boy barely responded, but slowly he began to speak again. He talked about missing home, about the stars he had seen from the moon's surface, and about strange machines that had surrounded him in the facility. They kept asking me questions. Ben said quietly one evening, "Not like your questions. They didn't want to know what I thought. They wanted to see how long I could stay in a room without sound. They wanted to see if I could breathe in heavy air." They kept writing things down. Daniel felt a cold anger rise inside him, but he kept his voice calm. "Did they hurt you?" Ben shook his head slowly. "Not the way you mean, but it felt like they wanted to see if I would break." Those words stayed with Daniel long after he left the infirmary. 2 days later, a quiet meeting took place in the Council's Grand Chamber. Representatives from dozens of species sat in curved rows. Beneath the high crystal ceiling, Daniel stood before them, his hands resting on the polished surface of the speaking podium. "I demand to know why our young delegate was subjected to this treatment," Daniel said. "If this is what you call cultural exchange, then perhaps we have misunderstood what the Council stands for." The head of the Council, a tall figure with silver skin named Vorthal, replied in a slow, measured tone, "Ambassador, no harm was intended. Our cultural methods have been refined over centuries. What you call discomfort, we call adaptation. Your species must learn to endure the ways of others if it wishes to stand among them." Daniel's jaw tightened. "Endure, yes, but not at the cost of a child's spirit." A murmur passed through the chamber, but Vorthal raised a hand and ended the discussion. "This matter is closed." As Daniel left the chamber, he knew one thing for certain: the matter was not closed, not for him, not for Earth, and certainly not for the boy who now sat alone in the ship's infirmary, staring at the stars with quiet, haunted eyes. The tension between Earth and the Galactic Council was no longer a quiet matter. It had spread across every human world, carried by news broadcasts and public anger. Every colony, from the icy mines of Europa to the sprawling cities of New Mars, was talking about Ben. The boy's face had become a symbol, a reminder that even in a galaxy of peace agreements and shining words, danger still existed. Daniel knew the protest could not go on forever without action. Words were no longer enough. The Council's refusal to release the names of those responsible had turned suspicion into certainty. Something inside him had shifted. The more he looked at Ben, the more he realized that the galaxy needed to understand one thing: humanity might be new here, but they would not be treated as lesser beings. A private message arrived from Earth Defense Command, summoning Daniel to a secure location. He boarded a small diplomatic shuttle that left Varelia Prime quietly. Under the cover of a standard supply run, the shuttle made its way toward an unmarked space station hidden in the asteroid belt. Near Mars, it was called Station Epsilon, a place known only to the highest levels of human leadership. From the outside, it looked like a cluster of cargo modules linked together, but inside it was a war planning center filled with holographic displays and strategic maps of the galaxy. Daniel stepped into the main conference room. Round the table sat President Malik, Admiral Price, Fleet Marshal Huang of the Mars Defense Force, and several other key leaders. Their faces were serious, the air heavy with unspoken urgency. Malik spoke first. Ambassador, you have done well to keep pressure on the Council, but it is clear they will not give us the truth willingly. We must decide our next move. Daniel took a seat. If we stay passive, we send the message that humans can be harmed without consequence. That cannot happen. Admiral Price leaned forward. His voice carried the weight of decades in command. We have the technology to strike. The question is whether we should. The Council believes we are too cautious to risk open conflict. They think we are still learning the rules of the galaxy. I say we remind them that humans write their own rules. Fleet Marshal Huang tapped a control pad. In the room's central holo-projector lit up. A map of the Council's major worlds appeared. Red markers highlighted communications hubs, supply stations, and defense outposts. If we act, we must do it quickly, she said. We take their ability to coordinate before they realize what we are doing. Without their central network, they will be too slow to unite against us. Daniel studied the glowing map. What happens when they do realize? We do not have the numbers for a long war. Price smiled faintly. We won't give them a long war. We hit hard, make our point, and leave them with no doubt that harming a human is costly. They will think twice before testing us again. Malik looked around the table. Understand this. If we choose this path, there is no going back to the old diplomacy. The galaxy will see us differently. Some will respect us, others will fear us. Daniel answered without hesitation. Better to be respected and feared than ignored. The room fell silent for a moment. Then Malik nodded. Very well. We proceed. Plans began to form quickly. The operation would be carried out by 3 task forces. The first, led by Admiral Price, would disable the Council's main communications hub orbiting the planet Raylos. The second, under Fleet Marshal Huang, would target military supply depots belonging to the species who voted to cover up Ben's treatment. The third would be a shadow fleet, fast, silent ships that would strike at strategic points and disappear before the Council could respond. Daniel's role would be different. He would remain the visible face of humanity in the Council chamber, continuing to speak as though negotiations were still possible. It would buy time for the fleets to move into position. Before leaving the station, Daniel visited one of the lower decks where engineers were preparing stealth cruisers. For the mission, rows of sleek black ships rested in the hangar, their surfaces absorbing light, their engines built for silent movement. He ran his hand along the cold metal of one hull. These ships were unlike anything humanity had shown the galaxy before. As he walked back to the shuttle, Daniel thought about the risk. This was not just about one boy anymore. It was about what kind of place humanity would hold in the galaxy. For centuries to come, if they did nothing, they would be seen as weak. If they acted, they could change the balance of power forever. The next weeks were filled with careful preparation. Across human space, military traffic increased quietly, but steadily. Civilian ships were redirected under the excuse of navigation exercises. In truth, the fleets were moving toward their starting points. Daniel kept his role as ambassador active, meeting with council members, attending ceremonies, and speaking in the Grand Chamber. Outwardly, he played the part of a patient negotiator, but behind every calm word was the knowledge of what was coming. Ben was recovering slowly. On one visit, Daniel found him in the ship's observation deck, watching a small Earth flag float inside a display case. "Do you think they'll ever say they're sorry?" Ben asked. Daniel shook his head. "They might not, but they will understand they can't do this again. On the day before the operation, Daniel sent one final encrypted message to Malik. The message was short and clear. "We are ready." That night, Daniel stood alone in his quarters aboard the Aurora Dawn. Outside the window, the stars were quiet and distant, but he knew that soon silence would be broken. Somewhere in the dark, human fleets waited for the signal. The decision had been made. Humanity would not beg for justice. They would take it. The stars above Raylos were calm, scattered like silver dust across the black, far below. The planet glowed with its vast oceans and green continents, a jewel in the galaxy. Orbiting high above it was the Galactic Council's primary communications hub, a station the size of a city, covered in towers and antennae, sending signals to hundreds of worlds for centuries. This hub had been the center of coordination for the Council's fleets. Every patrol, every trade convoy, every emergency call passed through its channels. Without it, the Council would be like a giant with its eyes covered and its ears blocked. Tonight, that giant was about to be blinded. Admiral Price stood on the bridge of the Resolute, the flagship of the First Task Force. The ship's walls hummed quietly, and the air smelled faintly of metal and recycled oxygen. Around him, crew members worked at their stations with focused precision. No one spoke more than necessary. Every order had been given in advance. Every movement had been rehearsed. On the display before him, the massive comm hub hung in the void, surrounded by defense satellites and patrol ships. The alien station's lights blinked in steady rhythm, unaware of the danger closing in. The Resolute and its escort fleet were running in full stealth mode. Their hulls absorbed enemy scans. Their engines emitted no visible trail. They had drifted silently for hours, moving along the shadow of a nearby asteroid field. Price's voice was calm as he gave the first order. "All ships, prepare the EMP payloads. On my mark, we strike together." The crews moved with practiced speed. The EMP warheads were not designed to destroy. They were meant to silence. Once activated, they would shut down every system in the station's range, from weapons to life support. The hub would go dark without a single shot fired. A quiet countdown began in Price's ear. When it reached 0, he gave the command, "Fire." In the emptiness of space, a dozen small flashes erupted as the EMP warheads launched from their tubes. They drifted forward like silent shadows, invisible to the station's sensors until it was too late. Inside the comm hub, alien operators were carrying out routine transmissions when their screens flickered. Lights dimmed, control panels died. The hum of machinery faded into a deep, unnatural silence, one by one. The satellites around the hub went dark, their weapons and sensors shutting down. Patrol ships lost contact with each other, drifting helplessly without orders. On the Resolute, Price watched the map change as enemy signals vanished. "Phase 1 complete," he said. "Move in." The stealth fleet surged forward, their black hulls passing through the station's defensive ring without resistance. Marines in armored suits boarded the powerless hub, moving through dark corridors lit only by the glow of their helmet lights. The alien staff offered no fight without their weapons and systems. They were helpless. Price's orders were clear. No harm to civilians, no unnecessary damage. This was not about destruction. This was about control. Within an hour, the humans had seized the station's command center and locked down every transmission channel. A signal was sent back to Earth Defense Command, Raylos hub secured. The Council is blind. At the same time, Fleet Marshal Huang's task force struck the second target, the supply depots of 3 Council species who had voted to hide the truth about Ben. Using precision railgun fire, they destroyed military fuel reserves and shipyards, leaving civilian infrastructure untouched. The message was deliberate. This was not war against innocent populations. It was a warning to the leaders. Meanwhile, the Shadow Fleet carried out the most dangerous part of the operation. Dozens of small, fast ships jumped between star systems, striking key sensor arrays, disabling encrypted relay stations, and vanishing before local forces could react. Each attack lasted less than 20 minutes, leaving the Council scrambling to guess where they would appear next. Back on Varelia Prime, Daniel sat in the council chamber as the first signs of chaos appeared. Representatives were receiving urgent messages from their fleets, only to lose contact seconds later. Murmurs rose into sharp voices. Questions flew across the chamber. Vorthal, the council leader, demanded order. Ambassador Daniel, is your government responsible for this interference? Daniel kept his expression calm. My government has always been committed to protecting human lives. If your networks are failing, perhaps you should ask yourselves why your defenses are so easily breached. Vorthal's silver eyes narrowed. If this is your doing, you have made a grave mistake. Daniel met his gaze without flinching. The grave mistake was made when a child from my world was taken and treated without care. This is the result. The chamber erupted into noise. Some alien leaders shouted for retaliation. Others demanded proof before taking action. But without their central hub, coordination was impossible. Messages arrived late or not at all. Fleet movement stalled. On the bridge of the Resolute, Price gave his final order for the day. All ships, withdraw to safe coordinates. We've made our point. The human fleet pulled back, leaving the powerless hub adrift in orbit. When the Council finally restored partial communications, they found their military response delayed by hours. By then, the humans were gone, leaving only a silent reminder that the galaxy's newest member could strike at the heart of their power. That night, across human space, quiet celebrations took place. In mining towns, workers raised glasses to the fleets. In space stations, children pointed at holos of the Resolute, their voices filled with pride. Daniel did not celebrate. He sat alone in his quarters. Knowing the Council's pride had been wounded deeply, they would not forget this, and they would not forgive it easily. Still, the message was clear. Earth was no longer a junior member. They were a force to be reckoned with. The Council's silence after the first strike lasted only a short time. Within days, alien fleets began moving again, but their coordination was weak. The destruction of the Relo's communications hub had left their chains of command fractured. Messages took hours to reach their targets, and orders were often outdated before they arrived. Human leaders saw the opening. The goal had never been to destroy the Council entirely. It was to make them understand that harming a human was an act with heavy consequences. But the first strike alone was not enough. The fleets needed to send a message so clear, so undeniable, that no one in the galaxy could ignore it. President Malik's voice carried across the encrypted channel. We move to the second phase. Strike at the worlds of those who hid the truth. Do not touch civilians. Destroy their war factories, shipyards, and power grids. Leave them unable to raise a weapon against us for years. Admiral Price acknowledged the order without hesitation. His fleet split into 4 groups, each targeting a different Council species that had voted to shield the facility responsible. For Ben's treatment, every group carried the same instructions: hit military and industrial sites. Leave cities standing. The first fleet arrived in the Renner system. The Renner homeworld was a place of towering stone cities and massive shipyards, floating above a pale blue ocean. Human warships emerged from hyperspace in perfect formation. Before the Renner defense fleet could even deploy, human railguns opened fire with precision. Massive steel projectiles tore through the orbiting shipyards, scattering debris into the sea below. Next, targeted missiles struck the planetary energy grids, shutting down the flow of power to the military districts. Across the surface, Renner troops found their weapons dead and their vehicles powerless. Fleet Marshal Huang led the second strike against the Zalcor system. The Zalcor were known for their advanced weapon designs and their largest production. Facilities were buried under mountain ranges. Human stealth bombers flew low through the thin atmosphere, releasing seismic charges that shook the ground. The factories collapsed inward, their machinery buried under tons of rock. In the Draven system, the Third Fleet targeted orbital defense rings. Using coordinated pulses from directed energy cannons, they overheated the rings' control cores until they fused into useless metal shells. The Draven homeworld's skies went dark as the last of its military satellites fell silent. Finally, the Shadow Fleet took on the most dangerous target, the world of the Zerati, one of the oldest and most influential members of the Council. Their capital was untouched, but every nearby weapons depot was destroyed in quick, silent strikes. The Zerati military woke to find their supply lines severed, and their fleet stranded in distant sectors without fuel. Every strike was carried out with the same discipline. Human commanders ordered their crews to avoid civilian zones. The point was not to bring suffering to ordinary people. It was to show their leaders that they could be disarmed without warning from orbit. The destruction was a controlled fire. Cities glowed with their normal lights, but the great engines of war had gone dark. The council worlds were not burning in chaos, but in humiliation. Their once proud fleets and factories now lay in ruins. News of the attacks spread faster than the council could respond. Independent traders carried stories from system to system. Holos showed human ships breaking through ancient defenses, their movements sharp and unstoppable. Alien commentators described the strikes as surgical storms, precise, devastating, and impossible to block. On Varelia Prime, Daniel watched the panic grow in the council chamber. Representatives who had once dismissed him now spoke in urgent tones. Some accused Earth of recklessness, others demanded an immediate ceasefire. But a few, quietly, began to ask the question Daniel had been waiting for. What would it take to end the conflict? Vorthel confronted him directly after one such meeting. Ambassador, your fleets have crossed every line of diplomacy. You have attacked worlds that have stood for thousands of years without invasion. Do you understand the danger you have brought upon your own people? Daniel stood tall. Do you understand the danger you brought upon yourselves when you decided that the harm done to a human child was not worth your concern? The silver-skinned leader's eyes narrowed, but he said nothing more. In the streets of Earth's cities, people gathered to watch the footage of the strikes. In mining towns and farming colonies, families sat together and listened to the broadcasts. Everywhere, the mood was the same: pride. Humanity had stepped into a galaxy full of older, stronger civilizations and had proven they would not be pushed aside. But Daniel knew the fight was not yet over. The council had been wounded, not broken. Soon they would gather their strength, and when they did, the choice would come: to accept their terms or to push them even further. That choice would arrive sooner than anyone expected. 3 days after the strikes, a message reached Earth from an anonymous source inside the council. It contained a list, the names of the individuals who had approved the observation program that placed Ben in the alien facility. There were 6 names in total, representing 3 different species. The list also came with a warning. These individuals were under protection, hidden in secure locations. The council would never hand them over willingly. Admiral Price studied the message and then looked to Malik and Daniel. We have shown them what we can do to their worlds. Now we show them what we can do to the people who think they can hide. Daniel felt the weight of the moment. The second phase had made the galaxy fear humanity's fleets. The next move would decide whether that fear turned into lasting respect or open war. The galaxy had never seen a display of human power like the recent strikes. The council worlds were silent and vulnerable, their fleets scattered and their defenses crippled. Across human space, people celebrated, but on the bridges of Earth's ships and in the halls of government, leaders knew the real work was just beginning. The list of the council members who had approved the observation program that harmed Ben now lay on Daniel's desk. The names belonged to 6 individuals, 3 species, hidden in the most secure locations the council could manage. Their protection was tight, but Earth had already shown that they could strike with precision. President Malik convened a meeting in the orbital chamber above Mars. Daniel, Admiral Price, Fleet Marshal Huang, and several intelligence officers were present. The discussion was serious and strategic. We have forced their hand, Daniel began, but the people responsible are still protected. We cannot allow them to escape justice. If we let them hide, the message we sent with our fleets will be weakened. Admiral Price nodded, agreed. We've already shown that we can reach their worlds. Now we show that no one who harms a human is untouchable. Precision operations, capture, not destruction. We take them alive if possible, but we disable all resistance. Huang brought up a holographic map of the council sectors. Each of the 6 individuals had known locations, though heavily defended. It won't be easy. She said each has guards, automated defenses, and environmental hazards. But the routes are mapped, we can move fast, and with our stealth technology, we can reach them before the council organizes a defense. Daniel felt the tension in the room. This was no longer a demonstration. It was a calculated pursuit of justice. We cannot fail, he said firmly. We are not acting out of revenge. We are acting to enforce accountability. This is the moment to show the galaxy that humanity protects its own, and we respect law and order above all. The plan was set. Each target would be approached simultaneously. The goal was to disable defenses, secure the individuals, and return them to Earth for trial. Civilian areas were strictly off-limits, ensuring no harm came to innocent populations. Within hours, human fleets moved into position. The first operation targeted Vornik, a remote moon where one of the scientists of the Council hid. Human stealth cruisers dropped silently through the moon's thin atmosphere. Marines boarded the research complex, bypassing security systems and locking down entrances. Within minutes, the scientist was secured. He was unarmed and unharmed, but completely aware that he had been caught. On Zalcor Prime, a heavily fortified City House, 2 of the remaining culprits, shadow fleets arrived undetected, disabling power generators that supplied weapons systems. Specialized human units moved through the streets with precision. Citizens looked on in curiosity as the operation unfolded without violence. The targets were captured and placed on secure transport shuttles bound for Earth. The Zerati operative, considered the most dangerous of the 6, had taken refuge in a subterranean palace. Beneath the capital, pressure sensors, automated defenses, and patrol units surrounded him. Human intelligence had mapped every corridor and trap. Using drones and remote hacking, the palace's defenses were neutralized. A single team of elite Marines retrieved the operative and extracted him safely. Back aboard the Aurora Dawn, Daniel watched the operations unfold in real time. Communications from every strike team came through, success after success. By the end of the day, all 6 individuals were captured. No civilians were harmed. No major property was destroyed. Humanity had accomplished defeat the Council had believed impossible. When the news reached the Council chambers, panic replaced pride. Vorthal and other leaders convened in a private emergency session. Their most trusted members were gone, held by humans on their way to trial. No orders, no fleets. No countermeasures could reverse what had happened. Daniel addressed the Council for the first time. Since the captures were confirmed, the individuals responsible for harming a human child have been secured. They will face justice on Earth. This is not an act of vengeance, but an act of accountability. Let this be a lesson to all who believe that humans are powerless. The chamber was silent. Some members whispered to each other, stunned by the audacity of humanity. Others looked angry, but their anger was tempered by fear. For the first time, the Council had realized that humans were not only capable of reaching their worlds, but capable of enforcing justice according to their own laws, back on Earth. Ben watched the proceedings with Daniel by his side. They will really punish them, he asked quietly. Daniel nodded. They will face the consequences of their actions. That is how justice works. And you helped remind us why we must never be afraid to protect each other. Ben's eyes softened. He had begun to recover, though the memory of the facility still haunted him. Seeing the human fleets move with discipline, precision, and restraint gave him hope. His voice was steady when he said, I think they will understand now. Earth prepared for the trial of the 6 Council members. The proceedings were broadcast across human space into Council worlds willing to watch. Evidence was presented, the reports, medical scans, testimonies from Ben, and expert analyses from human scientists. Every detail showed the harm that had been done and the deliberate nature of the experiments. The 6 individuals were given the opportunity to speak in their defense. Their words were carefully chosen, full of justification and attempts to shift blame. But the evidence was clear, undeniable, and thorough. When the verdict was announced, Daniel stood with Earth's leaders. The court found each of the 6 guilty of violating universal ethical standards, harming a minor, and abusing their power. Sentences were handed down according to the human judicial system: confinement, restitution, and education in human ethics for a period of years. The sentences were firm, fair, and public, ensuring that the message was clear: harming a human carried consequences, no matter the species. Across the galaxy, reactions varied. Some were supportive, impressed by humanity's resolve. Others whispered warnings to their own governments, fearing that any similar act against humans would bring retaliation. Vorthal, though silent in public, met privately with Daniel. "Ambassador, you have changed the balance of the council in a way none of us anticipated." The methods were extreme, but effective. Daniel's answer was calm. "We sought justice. Humans do not forget. When one of ours is harmed, we act swiftly, precisely, and fairly. That is our way." The council would take time to recover from the shock, but a new reality had emerged. Humanity had shown restraint, intelligence, and power. The galaxy now understood that humans would not stand aside when one of their own was threatened, and that justice could be achieved without indiscriminate destruction. Ben smiled faintly when Daniel returned to Earth. "We did it," he said softly. Daniel knelt beside him. "Yes, we did. And the galaxy will remember that humans protect their own." For the first time in weeks, Ben's eyes reflected not fear, but hope. Humanity had enforced justice, strengthened its position, and proved that even against older, larger civilizations, courage, intelligence, and unity could win. The galaxy had changed, and humans had taken their rightful place as a force to be reckoned with. The galaxy had changed. The actions of humanity during the past weeks had sent ripples through every system, every council chamber, and every fleet. Where once humans had been considered a young, inexperienced species, they were now recognized as a force capable of intelligence, courage, and discipline on Earth. The celebrations were quiet but proud. Citizens gathered in squares, city streets, and spaceports, discussing the recent trials and operations with awe. People spoke not only of victory, but of honor. Humanity had shown restraint, choosing to protect civilians even while striking decisively at those who had harmed one of their own. Daniel stood on the observation deck of the Aurora Dawn, overlooking the Earth below. The blue and green sphere spun slowly in space, peaceful in appearance. Yet the balance of power in the galaxy had shifted because of what humans had done. Beside him, Ben watched with curiosity. He was healthier now, his laughter returning, his steps more confident. He had become a symbol, a reminder to all humans that they must protect each other, and to the galaxy that humans would not accept injustice lightly. "Do you think they will try to fight back?" Ben asked. Daniel shook his head. "Some might test us in the future, but now they understand that harming humans has consequences. It will take time for them to fully adjust. But the message has been sent." Meanwhile, the council was reorganizing. Vorthal had stepped down as the leader, his authority weakened by the public failure of the council to protect their own members, and by humanity's decisive actions. New leaders were chosen, but they understood that diplomacy with humans had changed. The tone of negotiations, agreements, and treaties now carried respect and caution. Earth had begun to send envoys not only as diplomats, but as teachers of human ethics. The council members who had tried to hide their wrongdoing were under supervision, receiving education about responsibility, fairness, and the value of human life. Daniel oversaw part of this program, ensuring that it was effective and respected human principles. Across human colonies, preparations continued for the future. Fleet exercises increased. Not as a threat, but as a show of readiness. Humanity had proven that they could act swiftly and decisively, and now every young recruit understood the importance of discipline, strategy, and ethics. Ben was invited to see the fleets in formation. He stood on a viewing platform as human ships, from small interceptors to massive cruisers, glided in precise patterns. The crews waved, smiled, and saluted. It was a lesson in coordination and teamwork, and a reminder that humans work together, not just for power, But for each other. Daniel spoke quietly to Ben. The galaxy will not forget what we have done. But more important, you will never forget that humans protect their own. We fight not because we want war, but because we value life. Ben nodded, his eyes following the ships. I understand. I want to help too. One day. Daniel smiled. You? Well, every generation learns from the ones before it. Humanity will be stronger because of what you endured and because of what we did together. Back in the council chambers, diplomacy resumed with a new tone. Human ambassadors were treated with respect. Other species who had once looked down on humans now listened carefully, understanding that any misstep against humans could have consequences. Agreements were written to reflect a balance between cooperation and deterrence. Daniel was careful to maintain a message of peace. Humanity did not seek to dominate, but to be treated as equals. Every speech he gave emphasized responsibility, justice, and mutual respect. The message was clear: humans would protect themselves and their own, but they preferred dialogue and fairness over conflict. On distant worlds, aliens shared stories of the humans, who had struck without unnecessary destruction. Children learned of Earth's fleets and the careful precision of their operations. Teachers used the events as lessons in strategy, courage, and ethics. Even in a galaxy full of powerful civilizations, humans were becoming an example of restraint combined with strength. Earth itself focused on rebuilding and strengthening connections with other worlds. Trade agreements expanded, cultural exchanges increased, and scientific collaboration grew. Humanity's reputation was no longer just as explorers or settlers, but as a species capable of shaping the galaxy's moral and strategic landscape. Daniel spent time with Ben, reflecting on the journey they had taken together, from a frightened child rescued from the council facility to a witness of humanity's courage and justice. Ben had seen both the worst and the best of the galaxy. You have changed everything, Ben said one evening, watching the stars. Do you think it will last? Daniel's gaze was steady. It will last as long as humans remember what they are capable of and what they must protect. We have shown the galaxy our strength and our fairness. Now it is up to everyone, humans and others alike, to honor that lesson. In the following months, humans began to mentor other species in ethics, strategy, and the responsible use of power. The galaxy slowly adapted, recognizing that Earth was not only strong but also principled. Diplomacy took on a new meaning, with humans often acting as mediators in disputes, their reputation lending weight to peacekeeping efforts. Meanwhile, Ben continued to recover fully. Growing confident and curious about the universe, he often visited fleet exercises, learning about strategy and leadership. Daniel encouraged him, knowing that the boy would one day play a role in guiding humanity in the galaxy. The story of the council facility, the first strike, the operations against the council worlds, and the capture of those responsible became a defining chapter in human history. Textbooks, holos, and recordings preserved the events for future generations. Humanity had learned the value of courage, precision, and unity, and the galaxy had learned that humans would never allow injustice to go unchecked. Years later, Daniel watched from Earth's space station as fleets from multiple species came to visit, not as enemies, but as allies and students. The balance of power had shifted, but the galaxy was safer, guided by the principles humanity had shown: strength tempered by fairness, courage guided by justice, and unity supported by ethics. Daniel turned to Ben, now older and taller, ready to explore new responsibilities. The galaxy has changed, Ben, and it will continue to change. But humanity will always be ready to lead with honor. Ben smiled. I understand now. We protect each other, we act with fairness, and we never forget who we are. The stars outside the station glimmered like a promise. Humanity had fought, had demanded justice, and had reshaped the galaxy's view of their species. The new order was not built on fear alone, but on the knowledge that humans were capable of great courage, unmatched discipline, and principled strength. The galaxy had learned a lesson it would never forget.